The Emperor and the King, Part 2. Later they saw some kind of island in the sea, and they drew near there. There were 12 pirates there. The pirates wanted to kill them. She asked, "Who is the superior amongst you?" They showed her. She said to him, "What do you do?" He told her they were robbers. She said to him, "We too are robbers. Only you rob with your might, and we rob with shrewdness, for we are learned in languages and play musical instruments. Therefore, what will you win if you kill us? Better to take us for wives, and you will have great wealth too." And she showed them what was on the ship, for the ship belonged to the trader's son with his great wealth. Afterwards, she told them that she would honor them with very good wine, which she has on board the ship, which she does not use at all. Only the wine is kept in store by her until God brings her her match. She gave them the wine in 12 goblets and said that all of them should drink, to each 12. They drank, got drunk, and collapsed. She called out to the other noblewomen, "Go and each of you kill your man." They went and killed off all of them, and they found enormous wealth there, such as cannot be found with any king. They decided that they should not take any copper or silver, only gold and precious stones, and they threw out from their ship things, which are not so important, and loaded up the entire ship with precious things, with the gold and precious stones that they found there. And they came to a decision to no longer go dressed as women, and they sewed men's clothing for themselves, German style, and went with the ship. And the day came to pass, and there was a king. The king had an only son, and he had made him a wedding and had transferred the kingdom to him. Once he said to his father he would go on a leisurely trip with his wife on the sea, so that she become accustomed to the sea air, lest at some time they would have to flee on the sea. The king's son went with his wife and with the royal ministers and set out on a ship, and they were very merry there and played freely. Later they said they would all take off their clothes. They did so, and nothing remained on them except their shirts. And they urged everybody who could to climb up to the mast. The prince climbed up on the mast. Meanwhile, the emperor's daughter approached with her ship and saw this ship of the prince with the ministers. Initially, she was afraid of going there. Then she came a bit closer. She saw that they were playing intensely, so she understood that they were not pirates. She began drawing closer. The emperor's daughter announced to her retinue, "I can throw that bald-head guy down into the sea. That is the prince who was climbing up the mast." For the prince had a bald head. She answered them, "She has a burning lens, and with it she will cast him down." And she decided she would not knock him down until he reaches the very top of the mast, because as long as he was in the middle of the mast, were he to fall, he would fall into the ship, whereas when he reaches the top, then when he falls, he will fall into the sea. She waited until he was up on the top of the mast. She took the burning lens and held it facing his brain until it burned his brain. He fell down into the sea. When he fell down, there was a great commotion there on the ship, and they did not know what to do. How could they return home? For the king would die of heartbreak. They decided to go to the ship that they saw, that is, to the ship of the emperor's daughter. Perhaps there would be some doctor there on board who could give them a solution. The emperor's daughter instructed them to draw him out of the sea. They went and found him and took him out. The emperor's daughter took his pulse with her hand and said his brain had been burnt. They went and tore open his brain and saw it was as she had said, and they were awestruck, that is, it was a great novelty to them, how the doctor, that is, the emperor's daughter, had been so correct. And they requested that she go together with them to their home. She would be doctor to the king and would be very esteemed by him. She did not want to, and she said that she was not a doctor at all, only she knows such things. Now the people of the prince's ship did not want to return home. The two ships went together. It pleased the royal ministers very much that their queen, that is, the wife of the prince, should take the doctor, that is, the emperor's daughter, who was going dressed as a male, and they thought that it was a doctor. For they saw she was exceedingly wise. Therefore they wanted their queen, who was the wife of the prince who died, to marry the doctor, that is, the emperor's daughter, and he would be their king. And their old king, that is, the father of the king, they would kill. Only they were ashamed to tell the queen that she should marry a doctor. But the queen too was pleased to marry the doctor, only she feared the country. Perhaps they would not want him to be king. They came to the decision to make balls, that is, banquets, so that while drinking, at a time of merriment, they would be able to talk about it. They made a ball for each one of them on a separate day. When the day came for the ball of the doctor, that is, the emperor's daughter, he gave them of his aforementioned wine that he had, and they got drunk. When they were merry, the ministers said, how beautiful it would be if the queen would marry the doctor. The doctor, that is, the emperor's daughter, replied, it would surely be very beautiful if only they said this with a not drunken mouth. The queen also replied, it would be very beautiful for me to marry the doctor if only the country would agree to it. The doctor repeated, it would surely be very beautiful if only they proposed this with not drunken mouth. Afterwards, when they sobered up from their drunkenness, the ministers remembered what they had said and were embarrassed before the queen for having said such things. But they decided the queen herself had also said it. And the queen too was embarrassed before them, but she decided they themselves had also said it. Meanwhile, they began to talk about it, and so it was agreed. They betrothed. The queen with the doctor, that is, with the emperor's daughter, whom they thought was a doctor as mentioned, and they went home to their country. When the country saw them coming, they rejoiced greatly, since it had been a long time since the prince was away with the ship, and they did not know where he was, and the old king had meanwhile died before they arrived. Meanwhile, they noticed that their prince, who was their king, was not there. They, that is the country, asked, where is our king? They told them the whole story, that the prince had long been dead now, and that they had already taken a new king, who was accompanying them, that is, the doctor who was emperor's daughter. The countrymen were very happy that they had received a new king. The king, that is, the emperor's daughter, ordered to announce in all countries that whosoever was present anywhere, foreigner, guest, refugee, or exiled, should all come to his wedding. Not a single one should be absent. They would receive great gifts. And the king, that is, the emperor's daughter, also commanded to make fountains all around the city, so that anyone who wanted to drink would not have to go away to get a drink, but would be able to find a fountain next to him. And the king, that is, the emperor's daughter, also ordered for his picture to be drawn next to every fountain, and to station guards to watch for anyone coming along and looking hard at the picture, that is, at the portrait of the king, who was the emperor's daughter, as mentioned, and making a bad face, as someone who looks at something and is shocked or saddened. They should grab him and put him in prison. All this was done, and these three men came along, that is, the first prince, who was the true groom of the emperor's daughter, who had become king there, the merchant's son, who had been banished by his father on account of the emperor's daughter, who had fled from him with the ship and all its merchandise, and the deposed king, also on account of her, who had fled from him with the 11 daughters of nobility, as mentioned. And each of the three recognized that this was her picture, and they gazed intensely and remembered and became very anguished. They were caught and placed in prison. At the time of the wedding, the king, that is, the emperor's daughter, commanded to bring the captives before him. The three were brought, and she recognized them, but they did not recognize her, since she was dressed like a man. The emperor's daughter spoke up and said, "You, king, that is, the exiled king who was one of the prisoners, you were deposed on account of the 11 daughters of nobility who were lost. Take back your daughters of nobility, return home to your country and to your kingdom, because the 11 daughters of nobility were there with her here. You, merchant, that is, first she spoke to the deposed king, now she turned to speak to the merchant, that is, the merchant's son. You were banished by your father on account of the ship with its merchandise that was lost from you. Take back your ship with all the merchandise, and for your money being out so long, you now have a much greater wealth on the ship, many fold more than there was before. For the same ship with all the merchandise belonging to the merchant's son, with which she had fled, was still with her in its entirety, and in addition to this was all the wealth which she had taken from the pirates, which was extraordinary wealth, many fold more. And you, prince, that is the first prince who was truly her groom, come here and let's go home. They returned home. Amen and amen.